Greetings, everybody. This is the first film you will get for the second module, which is an introduction to the developmental psychology material. This is the overview that I talked to you about. George Costanza gives us a quote that's quite funny. You might want to read it, but basically the quote involves understanding that it's annoying that as you get older, you wished when you were younger you knew what you know when you were older, is what the quote is about. It's pretty funny, actually. I'll leave you to see the humor in it. So let's have some basic considerations about humans. One consideration is that anything singly that's a behavior that you do has many possible origins. So, if you are interested in art, then that has many different origins. It could be genetic, partly, really, it could, yes. It could be early exposure to an artistic family or background that you see a lot in others around you. It could be that you were encouraged quite a bit. It could be a lot of things, yeah? So every single behavior that we have, whatever it may be, has many possible origins. Another consideration is we're probably going to not know what those are. They're very complex. They often occur early in life. But guaranteed there's more than one reason why you do what you're doing, whatever that may be. Another consideration is that a single behavior serves many purposes. So why are you in school? Well, to get a good job, to have a job that's meaningful, to aspire to greatness, to earn a better living, all sorts of things, right? So a single behavior, whatever that may be, serves many purposes, and we're not likely to find out all those what those are. We can discover some of them, certainly, but may not know all of them. The next basic consideration is that when two opposite theories, which has a specific meaning in science, opposites mean that probably some truth exists from both directions as well as untruth. And so the truth is actually probably somewhere in between, yes, often, which is kind of interesting. Now, developmental psychologists make several basic assumptions. The first is that growth occurs at every stage of life. It doesn't stop with changing when you're 12, you continue to grow. It doesn't stop when you're 21. It goes all the way to your death. You're still growing and changing. The difference is that as you get older, you have more say in your own development. You see, when you're very, very young, you're a baby, you don't have a lot of choices. The environment provides the conditions under which you're going to grow and develop. Then as you get closer to teenage years, you have more control, you have more influence. Teenagers, definitely more. Young adults, more, all the way through to the end of your life. Okay? Now, the next one is that some things stay the same and some things change. There's continuity and change. Personality is an example of something that stays the same pretty much over the lifespan. Some things change. So for example, you might stop smoking, and that can create huge benefits, by the way, as you may know. And so we have to note that some things do change. Now, does deeper issues in our personality, do the deeper parts of our personality, I should say, do those change? Well, maybe, but probably not. So if you are slow to warm up and are a little anxious in new situations and you're not real gregarious and outgoing and so on, that probably is going to stay with you. Yeah. The next assumption is that we are integrated wholes. We are the sum of all the parts that are operating together, and you can't remove any part and expect the whole to work as it did. See, so we are integrated parts that comprise the whole of each of us. Okay, and you may have heard that, or not, that everybody's different and unique. Well, that's true and it's false. There are aspects of us that are unique and different, but there are many, many things, in fact, most things, that make us much more alike than different one from another. We'll talk more about that later. The next one is that context affects behavior. So where you are determines how you behave. You don't behave the same way in church as you do in school or on a first date with someone you're really attracted to. Those are different contexts. They call forth different behaviors, most of which are pretty automatic, because each of those contexts have different rules of engagement, rules for behavior that we learn to understand, most of us. In fact, those people who don't understand that those differences exist and exhibit those differences are not as fluid in society. They stand out, and they don't typically do quite as well. They're not as adaptable, you might say. And then the last basic assumption in this course is that individuals actively participate in their own development. So again, you are a sculptor of your development, and you must understand that to do your best in shaping how things go in the direction that you want them to, you see. So this is about choice making. This is about accepting responsibility. This is about understanding that you have a slow but inexorable opportunity to make changes for the better or not. Okay? A lot of people, many people, we don't have numbers associated with this, but many people, if you're a clinician, you'll see this, don't take those opportunities. They don't see them as opportunities. They don't decide that they have all that control over what they do. We know, based on the work of people like Viktor Frankl, that no matter what our circumstances are, some circumstances certainly are more confining than others, no question, but each of us has opportunities that we can take advantage of. There are choices we can make. Okay. So we can participate in our own development, and one should take that seriously, yes. Okay. So talk about systems now. And systems are groupings of more basic functioning, but we're going to talk about three systems. One is the biological, one is the psychological, and one is the societal. Okay? I'm going to change the slide view to a, let's see, to present. No. Okay. Okay. Custom slideshow. No. Okay. There we go. So, yeah. So, the biological system, which we will visit, is composed of all the subparts, all the more basic parts, like circulatory subsystem, the skeletal subsystem, the endocrinological endocrine system. How about that? And all of the things that put you together biologically that give rise to the other systems, right? I mean, the brain gives rise to the mind. Okay, you can't have a mind without a brain. You can have a brain without a mind. In some ways, that's difficult, but possible, I suppose. But biologically, that's where it starts. And we'll talk from time to time in each life stage about biological changes and shifts and underpinnings. Okay? Not much, but enough to appreciate it. Then the psychological system is all the intellectual and emotional functioning that you have. And the subsystems would be things like problem solving and the use of language and memory and all the things that our brain is capable of doing that impact our psychological functioning. And then the last system of three is the societal system, the social system. And that's composed of all the subsystems that integrate individuals into the social order. Okay? So in any social situation that you're in, let's say you're in a system of a family, that's a microcosmic system. There are processes within the family that help you integrate yourself into the family. There's a neighborhood. There's a school and social settings in institutions like school, church, and so on that have ways to assist you by learning the rules of engagement and behavior and so on to be able to take advantage of them, see. And so we interact our biology creates our psychological functioning. It also creates our need to be social because we are social creatures, more social than almost any other animal on Earth. If we don't have good social functioning, we don't do well. End of story. That's a true statement if there ever was one. But those psychological systems then interact with the social system to give rise to our competencies in interacting in various social systems and settings. You see. Okay. Now these systems, all three of them, can interact in different ways. They can complement one another. They can supplement when one system is not completely coming online and so on, or is missing in some ways or not quite adequate. They will be synergistic, which means they act together in pieces to create a whole that's bigger than the individual parts even. I mean, consider the brain that produces consciousness, which we don't really know much about. There's a huge ongoing debate that's never been solved about what consciousness is and how it's produced. Interesting. And this is done all at different levels, all different levels of functioning, from microscopic to macroscopic to social and so on. Okay? Now I want you to keep an open mind in this course. That means I want you to not come into the course thinking that what you have learned about the world, yourself, anyone, anything, and development is necessarily true. It turns out that most of us have some lessons we learned that don't represent the truth about this or other subjects. And so it's important to be open-minded. In the same way that it's important for me to present to you what we know is true versus what we think is true versus what we don't know. I will make those distinctions as we move through the course. Okay. Now, what has been generated in the past, really the 40s and 50s, more than at any other time, by a man named Erik Erikson, which is not his real name. He emigrated to the U.S. from Europe. And he, fascinating man, gray hair, interesting, a very calm and kind guy who would stop and talk to you. He had the Erik Erikson Institute at Harvard. He was the one that came up with the life stages and the psychological tasks that are the most important ones within each life stage, okay? And he came to the conclusion that we are the products of the integration of the biological, psychological, and social systems and all of those processes, okay? He's the one that not just said that, but demonstrated it, okay? He demonstrated it. So what are the basic questions that developmental psychologists ask? What are the big massive questions that you don't really do research directly on, but you contribute information concerning these questions when you do research? Research is almost invariably a very narrow set of circumstances that you're investigating, you see. First question that developmental psychologists ask is, what are the mechanisms for growth and development? And how does that happen? We know growth and development occurs. What are the mechanisms at different levels? What are the psychological mechanisms? What are the biological mechanisms? What are the social mechanisms, you see? And what factors, second question, underlie things that stay the same and things that change? Why are some things stable? Why do some things change? Why? What's the reason? What are the factors that underlie those? Interesting. And then a really big question that's really one we're going to try to answer, but know that ahead of time we're going to fail because it's not possible to know all about this. And that is how those physical, social, and psychological systems interact with each other. It's a huge question. And I'm going to get to the next stuff in just a minute.